First of all, welcome everyone to today's webinar on future fuels. As the world grapples with the urgent need to reduce carbon emission and shift towards cleaner, more sustainable energy sources, whether it's hydrogen, biofuels, synthetic fuels, or electrification, the transition to future fuel is not just an environmental necessity, but also a technological and economic opportunity. In this webinar, we will explore the emerging fuels that could revolutionize transportation, energy generation, and industrial processes. Our expert speakers will guide us through the latest advancements, challenges, and real-world applications of these next-generation fuels. Before we start with our first presentation, I want to mention a few things. The speakers are from some of the leading shipping companies in Europe, and they have agreed to share their insight of their view on future fuels. To make this webinar as good as possible, we also need you from the audience to interact with questions after the presentation. To raise a question, please write in the chat column, and we will address them after all the speakers have held their presentation. Let's get this session started and embark on the journey toward a greener future. Our first speaker will be Charlotte Røjgaard, who is the Global Marine Fuels Director at Bureau Veritas. Prior joining Bureau Veritas, she worked 15 years for MAN Energy Solutions, advancing through the ranks and eventually rising to Technical Director. Welcome, Charlotte. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm working for a fuel testing agency, and of course, we see things from a little from the outside compared to the ship operators. I also sit on the ISO 8217 committee as well as on the board of CMAC. If we look into the current order book, we could see that there is a significant uptake of the new fuels. Still, about half of all the ships being ordered today are with conventional fuels. We can also see that a big portion of the ships ordered are for LNG. Worth to note is that all the new technologies here, all the ships being ordered for the new fuels are dual fuel. That means they will have the option to operate on either traditional fuel or the new specific fuels for which they have been ordered. Methanol is not really a new technology. It was used for the first time in 2015, so we are familiar with the technology and with the requirements of methanol. We'll get back to the energy density of methanol as well as the other fuels. We'll talk more about that later on. We can also see when we look into the statistics or the available information in the industry is that methanol is available in many ports around the world. There is a lot of methanol, but of course the big question is whether the methanol we get is renewable or not. We can see from the Methanol Institute information that the ramp up of renewable methanol from the industry, the supply of that is also on the increase. But bear in mind that if you look at the amount of it, 25 million tons, and considering the energy density, this raises one of the big questions to the industry: will there be enough? And will we be able to get that green methanol when we need it? Another topic that's being discussed a lot in the industry is ammonia. Ammonia, we need to remember that we do not have any ammonia engines available commercially yet. We have not yet had the first ship produced or manufactured, delivered for ammonia operation. Another topic to discuss and to consider in depth when it comes to ammonia is, of course, on the safety. It's a very toxic product. Another thing is the environmental side of things. There is, of course, the well-to-wake approach and the greenhouse gases related to the full way-to-wake. But we also need to consider the combustion byproducts, the NOx or N2O, which is a powerful greenhouse gas when it comes to that. I mentioned about the energy density of these new fuels, and I think that this slide illustrates pretty well the topic and the challenge that we face. The HFO and the MGO, the fossil fuels, the conventional fuels that we know well, are the fuels that has the higher energy density. Even biodiesel has a slightly lower energy density compared to the fossil fuels. But if we look even further and look at the LNG and the methanol or the ammonia, the energy density is significantly less. So that means either the ship needs to be able to bunker more frequently in order to get from A to B, or they need to be installed with larger tanks in order to cover that lower energy density. This is just an illustration to show the difference in tanks required in getting the same distance on the various type of new fuels. So it's quite clear to see that in order to get from A to B on a methanol or an ammonia or an LNG, you need more tank space, or we need to build that supply infrastructure much more than what we have today. Another option is, of course, biofuel. And biofuel is the one fuel that can be chosen today without additional CapEx. It benefits from having an improved CO2 emission factor, and it can be mixed with fossil fuels as a drop-in. So just to summarize very quickly the differences between these different type of fuel. I will not go into details with that because I promised to do it short. So just to say that the more red or amber or yellow here, the more challenging the new fuels are. So it's quite clear to see that biofuel is what we know, that is what can be used today without significant challenges. Methanol is semi there, whereas the ammonia and hydrogen still has some quite high challenges that we need to overcome to get into that environment. And with that, I will say thank you very much, and I will leave the floor to the next speaker.
Yes, thank you very much, Charlotte. That was a great introduction to the different types of fuel available and the outlook for the future. If anyone has questions, I kindly remind you to write them down in the chat, and we will get back to your questions later. Moving on, our next speaker will be Peter Björkborg, who is the head of energy transition at Stena Teknik. Peter is heading up Stena's initiatives within the field of energy transition, including alternative fuels and energy carriers. Prior to this assignment, he was responsible for sustainability and decarbonation at Stena's tanker business, where one of the primary focus areas was the commercial development of methanol as a fuel for global shipping. So a warm welcome to Peter. Please start your presentation.
Thank you, Anton. And thank you also, Charlotte, for a very good introduction to the different fuel options. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we approach this from Stena's perspective. How do we navigate this field? Because apparently there's a lot of options, and none of the options are perfect. So I'm going to share a little bit about that very quickly first. About Stena, just for context, it's a big family-owned Swedish company, and we are active in a lot of different segments. Now we're going to focus on shipping, of course, and primarily focus on the two biggest, let's say, bunker consumers that we have in Stena, and that is the Northern European ferry operations, and it's the global tanker operations. So that's going to be the focus of this presentation. Just to kick it off, I think it's important to remind ourselves that this transition that we're talking about, we're already in it. So for us as a ship owner, it's very important already now that we have an idea about how we're going to navigate. That is one thing. And the second thing is that we also need to understand, I think, that we are not only transitioning our own companies and our own industry, but we're also a part of a bigger transition. We are part of the energy logistics system with our tankers. We're also part of European infrastructure that we need to decarbonize. So I think you mentioned that in the beginning, Anton. This is a great challenge, but we also think there will be a lot of interesting opportunities along the way if we manage to navigate this in the right way. This webinar is about fuels, of course, but coming back to the earlier point of energy density, what we also need to do is to make sure that we need as little energy as possible. That is certainly going to be key for us to be able to change to new fuels, because regardless of which fuel we choose, we're going to face the challenge of cost. We're going to face the challenge of availability and infrastructure. So the less of the new fuels that we need, the easier it will be. So that is a big focus for us. Another big focus for us, apart from the fuels, is electrification. We believe that shorter routes in our ferry network, we might be able to electrify fully, and some we will be able to electrify with a hybrid solution. So direct electrification and batteries is also going to be part of the solution, we believe. Going to the fuels then. Charlotte already mentioned some of these options. Biofuel, again, it's here and now. We can start using it by dropping in or blending it into conventional fuel. We don't need to do heavy investments in engine conversions and so on. So very attractive from that standpoint. Methanol is also something that is here and now in the sense that there are engines available. We have been using it since 2015. We know that it works. We also have 6 methanol carriers running on methanol on the water. And we're seeing a good momentum in the industry for methanol. Ammonia and hydrogen, we don't work so actively with. We are involved in some research projects and some collaboration projects around this. We believe that ammonia could have a role to play in some segments, and potentially hydrogen could have some role to play as well. But those we are not as active in. So what do we make of all this from a, let's say, tactical and strategic standpoint? Well, we believe that drop-in biofuel will be the, let's say, go-to option for most operators and ourselves as well, for the reasons just mentioned. Unless you go for LNG, I would say most people will go for the drop-in biofuel initially. We do see, however, that the demand, especially going into the 30s, is going to increase a lot. And not only from shipping, but also from aviation that will have more strict regulations coming in the 30s. So we do believe that it will be a challenge with availability, which will also mean that there will be a challenge in price. So for us, methanol unlocks a second pathway, you can say. So we can still work with the biofuels, but we can also work with methanol. And that's why we have 1 ship already running on methanol. We have 2 more freight ro-ro ships on order, and we're also looking at conversions. So why methanol then? Well, it's really coming back to the fact that we know it works. We have been running on methanol for almost 10 years. It's a here and now solution for us. It's a fuel that is easy to handle and easy to work with. There are, as we heard before, commercially available already technology and engines. Methanol also has the benefit that it's widely available. It's a very much traded commodity around the world, which means that there are storage around in many ports, for instance. Not bunker infrastructure per se, but it can, with not too much effort, be built out. And it also has a big benefit in that it can be produced with several different pathways. We have biomethanol, can be used from waste, can be produced from landfill, can be produced from biogas, and we also have the e-fuels from renewable electricity. The benefit with that is that we can have greater certainty that the fuel will be available in different parts of the world where there are different conditions for fuel production. So that's also a benefit for us. And of course, the environmental benefit of the green methanol. And finally, I think it was in the invite to this webinar, do we believe that it's an interim solution or is it a long-term solution? And first of all, I think it's important to be very, very humble and say that we don't really know. Second, I think it's very important to say that we're going to probably need all the different options in the end because of the challenges with scalability, as mentioned. But we do believe that methanol has the properties that would be needed. So for us, bio in the short run and methanol in the medium to long run is currently at least what we are focusing on. With the final comment that having that flexibility in the fleet to be able to work with more than one pathway is going to be crucial. So with that, I'm done and over to you, Anton.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. Very interesting to hear Stena's perspective and possibilities for methanol as a fuel for the long run. Next up, we have our third speaker, Lina Barsøe, who is the head of decarbonization pathways at DFDS. Lina began her career at DFDS in the technical organization, working as a naval architect and later as a performance manager. She then spent two and a half years as special advisor for Danish shipping. She rejoined DFDS in January 2024, where her deep knowledge of decarbonization techniques, detailed understanding of regulation, and clear vision to what is feasible and what is not are central to the company's transitions plan. Yes, okay, Lina, you're up.
Thank you very much. I seem to have an echo.
Yeah, I can hear this as well. How you think we're able to fix it, or should we take Matthias' presentation in between and then you can? Yeah, okay. Matthias, would you be so kind to start your presentation instead? I will just give a brief introduction of Matthias. 1 second, let's see here. Yes, Matthias Mattson, who is the chartering manager at Meriaura. Matthias has practical experience from working at sea as an officer before he joined Meriaura. He's been at Meriaura for a little more than 4 years and is now in charge of the project chartering, which include their biofuel ambition. Yes, please, Matthias, let's hear your presentation on biofuels.
Thank you, Anton, and thank you all also for Peter and Charlotte for your presentations. I think there will be perhaps some repeating, as I think we agree on a lot of points here. Yes, so Meriaura we are a small shipping company based in Turku, Finland. We operate in the short sea spectrum in the Baltic and Northern Europe mostly. And I think it's important to understand when you are talking about shipping companies that how they operate and where they operate, because what fuel type you will go for will be different depending on your operating area and also how the range that you need to operate in. And our chosen fuel that we are going with is biofuel, and I will explain a little bit why that's the case. So Meriaura is a pioneer in biofuels. We are one of the first sea carriers that have been using biofuel regularly, and our owner and founder Jussi Mälkiä, he already started in the early 90s experimenting with biofuels, because he had this vision that it must be a way to complete sea transportations in a sustainable manner. And after that, we have had a long way of developing our own biofuel. And in 2019, we have launched our EcoVoy concept, where we can actually sell the benefit to our customers for the reduction in carbon footprint. We have also 2 new buildings coming up, and they will mostly run on biofuel, or they can be run on 100% biofuel. They will be called our Eco Traders. And in our current fleet, we have 3 vessels that we can run on our biofuel. So a little bit about the fuel. We have a factory in Uusikaupunki here in Finland, and Meriaura is producing our own waste-based, ethically and sustainable produced biofuel. We are collecting raw materials from the food industry, mainly cooking oils, and these oils we can then turn into biofuel that we can use in our vessels. And I think Charlotte was a little bit talking about this, that the biofuels, a little bit depending on where they come from, have a certain degree to sustainability also to them. But if you are able to use waste or products that would otherwise be counted as waste to fuel, that's the best solution you can have. So our carbon dioxide emission for our own biofuel is 97.8% well to wake, which is already a very good reduction, and tank to wake it counted as 100%. So we believe in biofuel because that's something that we have already today. You don't need any big modifications to your vessels on board, and there is a good ecosystem in the ports ashore. There is you can use the same methods as supplying MGO for the biofuels as well, and similar tanks can be used on board the vessels. So small costs involved to modify a vessel to be able to run on biofuel, and biofuel can also be mixed with fossil fuels, and you are able to find these locally produced biofuels from waste streams. There are, however, some limitations, and the limitations mostly come down to the raw materials, because the raw material is limited. We still see that there is potential to pick up the production and produce more, but there will always be this limit that how much waste can be found. And when you then are looking into other types of biofuel, then you are competing again with the food production, at least for some types of biofuel. The future for us, it's clear that we will continue using our biofuel. We also believe in Meriaura that it will be crucial for many shipping companies to find a fuel source that they can control themselves. And for us, it's the biofuel when we have their own production, because we all will have emission targets that we need to reach, and a way to do that is to have the fuel source that you know that will be available for you. We also, of course, look into the development in other fuels, such as synthetic fuels and other development. So we are closely following the market at the moment. Then quickly, a short view on our milestones, environmental milestones. Here you can see that we have started quite early, and now we have reached 2019. We reached the goal of having actually a product on the market that we can use, and now we are ordering 2 new vessels to run on these biofuels. But that's all I had for you now. There will be some questions later, so I will give the word back to Anton.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Very interesting presentation on biofuel. And Lina, how is the technical situation?
Let's try again.
Yeah, perfect. Now I don't hear the echo.
Okay.
So I think it should be working now. Perfect.
Yes.
Then I give you the word to you.
Thank you. And you should see my slides shortly.
Yes, we can see them now. Perfect.
Okay,
thank you.
Good. Thank you. Sorry for that little hiccup. And thanks for inviting me to this webinar to talk about DFDS strategy. DFDS is a logistics and ferry operator, so we operate throughout Europe, Turkey, and with a few activities in Northern Africa. But this is our sphere. So we don't do global ocean-going shipping, but we do both passenger and freight shipping. And that becomes relevant later. But first, let me introduce you to our targets. We have a target of reducing our emissions, CO2 emissions for our ferries with 45% by 2030. And we are committed to bringing the entire company to net zero by 2050. Currently, we are working on intermediate targets between 2030 and 2050. So essentially determining how should the trajectory look like. So we don't just do nothing until 49 and then it all drops in 50. And that, of course, has a large influence on which technologies we can apply. And we also look towards the technologies and when we expect them to become available when we design these trajectories. But zooming in on the 2030 pathway, this is for our vessels only. And what you will see is that we are actually able to reduce our emissions with 45%, referencing our 2008 baseline, by technical upgrades, by improved vessel design. But we're trying to go further, and we'll do that by making changes to the fleet, specifically making changes to how we fuel our vessels. So some of it is selling old vessel that comes when we bring in new tonnage. And what we are looking towards is actually 3 different kinds of energy to be introduced by 2030. So that is 2 methanol, either RoPax vessels or ro-ro vessels. So we could potentially have 2 passenger vessels on methanol by 2030. That hasn't been decided yet, but designs are currently competing internally. We expect to have 2 ammonia vessels underwater, and that they will be freight only due to the complexities of ammonia. And then for our short routes, we will electrify anything we can, starting with 2 vessels on the English Channel before 2030. So with that, I think it's clear that we consider all the options that are in place, and we look at it from the core out when we look at the maturity of different fuels, and we do the split between freight and passenger because there are significant differences in the safety aspects related to that. So for our freight vessel, our primary choice right now is green ammonia, and for our passenger vessels, it is green methanol. That does not mean we are blind to other things. We keep an open mind, and we are also open to the fact that towards 2050 and beyond, new technologies might emerge. We shouldn't rule something out before we fully understand the limitations and opportunities within each technology. So this is not a fixed diagram. This is something we do strategic research into to better understand. The only thing I think we can say we are quite certain of is that this will not be a single fuel future in the next many years. We think we will see different options being suitable for different trades and different kinds of operations. When we assess these new fuels, we look at it at a full life cycle perspective. So we look at the well-to-wake aspects of it. And for ammonia specifically, which I will zoom in on now, we look at what do we need during extraction, and there we need water and nitrogen. Probably there will be some transport, but then we can produce ammonia from this using existing technologies, the Haber-Bosch process for the synthesis, and electrolysis for getting hydrogen from the water. Again, we expect that ammonia will be produced close to where there's renewable electricity. Nitrogen we can get anywhere that's in the air. So this will be about optimizing towards where we have the production plants. We are already today in the world transporting a lot of ammonia for other purposes. We do not see that as a key restriction here. Then, of course, when we use it, when we move it, it will be in specialized equipment. And then, as was mentioned before, the big if with ammonia is how do we handle it to combust it to get the energy out of it. We don't currently have any internal combustion engine or fuel cells that can operate at the scale needed for international shipping. What we see as the key thing here is that there's no carbon required for ammonia, which makes it attractive because a lot of sectors will be fighting for this either biogenic carbon or carbon captured by direct air captures. This is one of the upsides of ammonia. I have included a very limited part of our SWOT analysis. I've tried to pick out those things that I find is most relevant for the introductory stages. But as we have dug deeper into this topic, we have also realized that a lot of this has many aspects, and a lot of the aspects of ammonia actually are present in all 4 boxes. So I will try to keep this as an introductory level, but then we can dive deeper later if needed. But of strength, I have already mentioned that it does not contain carbon. It is also produced in relatively few phases with less energy loss, and we are very cautious about the fact that we will not have sufficient renewable energy to sustain the energy need that we have today. And if our energy need increases just from the world evolving, but then additionally from producing fuel will be in big trouble. So we want to limit that, our energy need, as much as possible, and that also comes from limiting our losses. In weaknesses, it is poisonous and lethal for humans and marine life. It is not a chemical that should be handled lightly, and it cannot be handled at ambient conditions. So in all aspects of dealing with ammonia, we need specialized crew and we need specialized equipment. Major risks that needs to be addressed is the slip of nitrous oxide. It has a global warming potential of 278. That means if we emit 1 ton of nitrous oxide, we could just as well have emitted 278 tons of CO2. There's a risk of fraud. We can't tell if it is green or fossil ammonia once we take delivery of it, and fossil ammonia has a worse impact on the climate than the HFO. And then there is the competition with other sectors. This is used in agriculture and as a base chemical in a lot of processes. Opportunity side, we can produce it close to renewable energy sources and transport it relatively easy. And then this is one of the things that doubles is the opportunity to do cost sharing with other sectors so we can get really efficient big production plants set up. A few words on how we handle it, and we start with the strengths again. It does not contain carbon, so this is already a limited resource, and the fact that there are few production phases means that we are closer to the energy in its clean form. Handling its more dangerous aspects, we need special design and training of personnel. That is the reason this is not just rolled out fleet-wide to begin with. And this is also something that needs to be taken into consideration when transporting it. For risks, OEMs are deeply engaged in R&D on the nitrous oxide aspect, and we are following that and have very good dialogue, and we're quite confident that it can be solved. We need certification schemes, and we need very strict sanctions to be in place in order to counter fraud and ensure that that is not going to be the showstopper here. And then the competition with other sectors, I'll address that under opportunities. That is of course something that could make this a more commercially attractive option. Water and renewable energy are the key components for the production of ammonia, so there needs to be some thought in where these plants are located, but it is not something that we expect to be in short supply. Water might be, but then we need to look into how to limit the use of that. Finally, this is our cover slide from an EU application we did on an ammonia vessel, and what I want to bring up here is just that because this is a new fuel, a chemical with a lot of opportunities and a lot of good aspects, but also with a lot of security and safety. We work very, very closely with all stakeholders, and we don't want to roll this out in an environment where we are not certain that we can control pretty much everything. So our first ammonia vessel will be trading between Gothenburg and Ghent, where we own the terminals and have very good collaboration with local stakeholders. That was all from my side, and then I look forward to discuss it further in the questions.
Thank you very much, Lina. Really interesting to hear DFDS approach to future fuels, and especially your focus towards ammonia. Okay, that was our final presentation. So now we have a few minutes left for some questions. And then I ask you, Johanna, how does it look in the chat? Have we received any questions so far, or how does it look?
Hi, I'm the chat coordinator today. Well, not so much questions yet, but I guess there's still time. So to you attendees, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, but then I continue with my
you have some general questions.
because I have a few. Okay, first question, and this is generally to all of you, to all of our speakers. How is the cooperation within the industry? Are you sharing insights in regard of future fuels, different types of fuel, or how is that working? Is there like any, if you do a successful test or something, do you share it, or do you like keep it to yourself, or how is that working? Anyone want to question that or answer to that one? Yeah, okay, Matthias.
Well, I can start. Well, I think there are some collaboration, but usually we see that it's the research institutes, the engine manufacturers, who then invite owners to then come in and be in this project. So I think we are collaborating to some extent, but I haven't yet called another shipping company telling them about our what we are doing and if we had some successful tests. But yes, as an industry, we are more and more trying to collaborate, and because we still have the same goal of reducing the carbon footprint for the whole industry.
Okay, interesting. And Lina, you also have a comment on that?
Yes, and I think I can pick up where Matthias ended almost and say that we have called other shipping companies and told them about successful biofuel tests or other things that we have tested. And of course, there's a fine line between breaching competition laws and then sharing insights into this, because fuel consumptions for vessels is so commercially sensitive. What I think we see developing is this strong sense of understanding that no one can do this alone. And we need to share insights on the technical aspects, especially perhaps as we move towards these even more extreme fuels than biofuels. We can't afford to sit on information about safety or security aspects. That would be wrong in so many levels. So there's definitely something there, but we also share to keep encouragement high. This is extremely difficult. And if we only hear the stories about what can't be done, then it's very, very hard to get started if you are a smaller shipping company, which there is a lot of. And we've been doing partnerships for a very, very long time. That's half our business model in DFDS. So perhaps we're also a little bit more prone to sharing information, perhaps sometimes more widely than we should.
Okay, that was an interesting input. Thank you for that. Okay, Charlotte, you also want to have an answer?
Yeah, I can only agree with Lina. I mean, this is a huge task, and it's a huge challenge for the entire industry, and it cannot be done alone. We need the collaboration. Since I'm not working for a ship operator, I'm not in a competitive environment sharing the information. We get so many questions from ship operators, from other industry stakeholders. Let's not forget the supply industry, which is extremely important here, because if the shipping is doing their bit and focusing on a certain fuel or going in certain directions, we also need to ensure that we have the supply infrastructure in place. We also need the authorities to get involved here, because the authorities need to enforce that we actually get green fuels, so we do not offset the good things we want to do and actually make things worse by going after brown fuels. So it is an industry effort. It's reflected in industry international working groups like ISO, CMAC, the Maersk Center, all these industry groups working. It is important that the information is shared across the line.
Yeah, thank you for that, Charlotte. Okay, and on to you, Peter.
Yeah, I think most have been said, but I am quite positive actually, because a couple of years ago we actually picked up the phone and asked one of our competitors how their experience was from biofuel in that example, and it wasn't very fruitful conversation. Now I think we have come much further. I think we are much more open in the industry to actually share experience, because we know that we can separate technical conversations from commercial conversations, and we also understand that this is going to be incredibly challenging, like we have already discussed. So I think we see more and more of it, and also like you say, Charlotte, also not just between ship operators and owners, but also across the industry, working much closer with customers, working much closer with suppliers, because I think now we have been working with this for a few years, all of us, and we realize what the challenges are and that we actually need each other to solve this common problem.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, it sounds good. It seems like maybe the cooperation is growing. I get that impression from hearing from you. And what about Johanna? Have the chat? Have there been any questions now?
We have had 2 questions, so I'm going to take the first one. Can any inform how rules and regulation work for bunkering methanol ammonia, and how does this work for local ferry company that cannot take barge and need truck? Do any of you have some good answer to this?
Yes. Go ahead, Lina.
I think it's unfair to add if we had a good answer. I have a answer. I think the rules and regulations for methanol and ammonia, that part is relatively simple. There are no yet. They haven't been implemented. For methanol, it's a lot closer. Perhaps they're the biggest issue, as we see, is a standardization across all industry players, because it's been a very fragmented market so far. For ammonia, that is under development. The way we approach this is that we are lucky enough to have liner shipping in its most simple sense, in that we operate as ferries. So we go between 2 ports and 2 ports only with our vessels. So we can limit it to that at least. So we can work with local authorities on doing risk-based assessment for how are we going to do this specifically. I will say also, staying at ammonia, that this is a chemical that the world is used to handle. Shipping is not, but the world is. So we have thousands of tons of ammonia being delivered to farmers as fertilizers every year. It is used in the chemical industry, and for testing ammonia engines, OEMs have also found solutions for doing that. They are way more complex than for typical fossil fuels, but there they have found solutions for it, and it has been done with trucks, not with barges, primarily, at least. So for now, I'll say it's complex because there isn't a rule book you can just look to and then you have your answer. But it is doable, and our impression, at least from the area in the world where we operate, is that local authorities are very, very cooperative and helpful in doing risk-based assessments, ensuring that we do this in a safe manner, but that we also all agree that we need a way forward on this.
Thank you very much for that answer. And Johanna, do you have any more questions in the chat, or how does it look?
Yes, one more question. So, are there any state organizations which are active in gathering and sharing industrial developments to avoid direct information sharing and potential competition issues?
Anyone wanna comment on that one, or? Yes, Peter?
I'm not sure I have a good answer, but what we do see definitely is a lot of different organizations, be it state organizations or industry organizations, but a lot of forums popping up where the industry is trying to find ways to do this. I think the challenge for us as a ship owner is to find which ones we engage in, because there are so many of them, which is fundamentally a very good thing, because it shows that the industry is willing to share. I don't think there is, as to my knowledge, let's say a standardized way of sharing information or data. Would be good if that was the case. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we are, at least, again, coming back to the openness to share. It's a good start, and if we can build on that and also have a more standardized ways to share experience and data, I think that would be good. But to my knowledge, it's not there yet.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, okay, Lina, you can.
Yeah, I can completely align with what Peter is saying. There's definitely opportunities enough for providing input to a number of different groups trying to address this. State organizations specifically, I can think of one public-private setup that's called the Net Zero Shipping Mission. It's a collaborative effort between Denmark, Norway, and the US, if I am not completely mistaken, and then the Maersk Mc-Kinney Møller Center and Maritime Global Forum, and they are doing a lot of work in collecting that. I think the IMO is moving towards doing this kind of industry knowledge gathering through states, and then that is used to inform decision processes also. But it is a slow process, and it is not very structured yet. And for especially the IMO, the data goes in, but you can't access the data in its raw format once it's there. Then you only see the summary, very high level.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer. I guess no more questions in the chat, or how does it look?
No, not
okay.
yet.
Yeah, then I take another one of mine. If you build a new ship today, or let's say maybe the future is hard to see how the technology is developing, but let's say if you build a new ship today, will you be able to run it both on ammonia, biofuel, and methanol, or will the vessel be specifically designed for one of the fuel types? I think my question is but when you're talking about these new future fuels, could you combine them, or is it like if you go for a methanol ship, then you can only run it, or is it easy to use these different kinds of new types of fuel? Yes, Charlotte, go ahead.
I think this is one of the major challenges to the industry, because today, if you buy a ship, you know that you can get your fuel all over the world because a fossil fuel is available in all ports. But currently, with the engines being designed and developed, the technologies required for an LNG ship, for an ammonia ship, for a methanol ship, or a conventional fuel ship is significantly different. So you have the dual, right? You have the options to go on the fossil fuel, but you cannot, if you have a methanol ship, decide that in the next port I want to take ammonia or LNG. That is not possible. So that is one of the challenges. There may be options to go from an LPG to ammonia, but you cannot switch between these other types of fuel. So you are, unless you want to retrofit your ship, you are a little stuck with your choice. And I think that is part of the challenge, that when you decide to build a ship with methanol or ammonia or whatever, then that will be the fuel for that ship.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, go ahead, Matthias.
Yeah, I think that was a very good answer to this question, but I could add that when we are designing and looking at new vessels, we of course also don't want to shut the door totally, because there will be multi-fuel engines, and many engines are already. Most of the engines can be run on different fuel types. So you try to design the vessels in such a way that if you then decide to do a retrofit, the retrofit would be less costly in the future, because no one knows in maybe not 5, but let's say 10, 15 years, what will be the most common fuel type for the vessels. And then you want to have the opportunity at least to consider the retrofit.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And then how does it look in the chat? Have you received any questions, or should I take another one of mine?
No, go on with your questions.
Okay. Yes. How is the regulation for future fuel? Is it already defined or under development? For example, if it's possible to build an ammonia-driven vessel with today's regulations, or is that still under development? I hope you understand my question. Anyone want to comment on that? Yes, go ahead, Lina.
Yeah, I can give it a go. A lot of it is still under development, both for the vessel-specific aspects, but also for how will the fuels be accounted for under regulation. So what kind of GHG greenhouse gas saving benefit do you get from going with electricity versus ammonia versus biofuel? And that all comes back to how is regulation going to view different production pathways? And right now, the EU has come a long way with the Fuel EU being published. We know a lot about how they will assess different technologies. The big if right now is if the IMO will go down the same line, if their method will be slightly different. The worst case scenario, of course, being that if you can take the Fuel EU and you can sort of rank the fuels top to bottom on which one gives the most greenhouse gas savings. If the IMO does the same but ends up with a method that will mean that the IMO favor one fuel that is not the same as the EU, then you would have contradicting opinions for a vessel that would have to operate under both regulatory schemes. On the vessel side, a lot of it is still unknown as to just what we have for fossil fuels, just open a book. But there is the opportunity to do risk-based design with many classification societies, and then it's a lot more troublesome, but it's doable.
Yeah, thank you, Lina. Do you have a comment on that, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I can echo everything you say there, Lina, but just underline again how critical it's going to be to get those regulations in place and that certainty in place. Because I mean, let's be honest, I think most ship owners will look at, okay, what is the most economically feasible way for me to become compliant? And then we need to know, okay, what does compliant mean, and how do we count the different options? So I think we often talk about the challenge of operating in Europe because we have strong regulations coming and it's going to be expensive. But it's actually also a benefit that we do know which rules are coming and when. There are still some question marks, of course, so we need to straighten those out. But I think it is a benefit, actually. It helps us in planning the way forward. So it will be very, very interesting to follow now this year and next year what happens at the IMO. And I really, really hope that we can get that clarity. And also, like you say, Lina, the alignment, hopefully, with the EU as well.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yes, Johanna, did you have a question from the chat, or how does it look?
Yes, an interesting one. What about nuclear power? Anyone considering or developing that?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Charlotte, go ahead.
Yeah, I can give it a go. I mean, it's attractive thought that you buy a ship and it leaves the yard and you don't have to bunker for 25 years. But whether that will ever be a solution for commercial shipping, I think that is a big question when you consider safety in that area. But when we talk about this, about decarbonization, I don't think that we can avoid talking a little bit about nuclear, because the amount of green energy that's required to decarbonize shipping completely cannot be achieved with what we have today. So if we are going to really scale up production of green or blue methanol or ammonia or whatever, I don't see how we can avoid getting nuclear power into that aspect. So I think that may be where we will see the nuclear more.
Interesting. Yes, Lina, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a question that almost always comes up, and with good reason. I think if you had asked someone in 47, rebuilding Europe after war, hey, have you considered going to the moon? I think a lot of people would have said, oh, you know what? Actually, no, we're quite busy here. So let's not prejudge what's going to be the obvious good solution for in 49. We did go to the moon after all. We didn't go back, but we did go there once. In our case in DFDS, traditional heavy water uranium-based nuclear, no. That is simply too costly resource-wise in all the cement required and all the safety aspects. There are new opportunities in molten salt reactors and the like coming up. I align with Charlotte. I see this mostly as something for energy production, not on board the ships. Whether that is and will remain academia dreaming, or if it is something that's going to materialize, I think we follow developments, but it is not where we place our bets at the moment.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Peter, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think maybe two comments. First is that I think the magnitude of the challenge kind of should make us open to any solution. I think we shouldn't disregard any of the energy sources. Nuclear is an amazing energy source. We all know that, but we also know that it has obvious challenges. So I think it's same here. I think we're not working actively with this, but we follow the development very closely, and I think it's very good that others are looking at it, so we can, let's say, collectively as a shipping community, as an industry, work out different options and see what works in the long run. And the other point I think is that nuclear, even though it has potential, I think it's not going to take us to net zero, right? Because I think it's too far away. So from my perspective, we should focus primarily on what we already have, the technologies that we have, because we have a lot of good technologies. We have ammonia, we have methanol, we have biofuel, we have other things that we can start with now. So let's focus on that, and then we keep our eye on nuclear in the longer run and see in a couple of decades if that's a viable pathway or not.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, last comment from you, Matthias. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot have been said already, and it's for Meriaura's short sea shipping company, nuclear wouldn't be an option for us, but there might be some applications, but I think nuclear is the one big challenge that no one has still talked about is the political challenge, because it's a very tricky fuel source, and some countries might take it it might be very easy to come in with a vessel that would be nuclear, and some countries it would be out of the question. So you would limit the option quite much with the nuclear. It's not only the technical challenges, it's a lot of politics also involved. One second point is that there is already quite a lot of nuclear vessels, not on the market, but the military have been using them for decades. So there is the technology there and the knowledge also. But yeah, for Meriaura, it's interesting to follow, but for short sea shipping, I don't think that will be the main solution to go for.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias, for that final comment. Yes, to sum up the last minute, I have a few more words. I just want to share that. Thank you all for joining us today for this insightful webinar on the future of fuels. Over the last hour, we explored new techniques, innovations, and strategies that will shape how we power our world in the years to come. From renewable energy sources to hydrogen and biofuel, it's clear that the energy landscape is evolving rapidly, and it's up to all of us to be part of the transition. We hope that today's discussion has sparked new ideas and inspired you to consider how these advancements can be applied within your organization and industries. The future of fuels is not just about science and engineering. It's about collaboration, innovation, and making informed decisions to ensure a sustainable and energy-efficient world. As we move forward, let's remember that every step we take towards cleaner, more sustainable fuel solutions is a step towards a better future for generations to come. Once again, thank you to our speakers for sharing their expertise and to our attendees for your time and participation. Let's continue to stay connected, share insights, and work together to drive progress in this critical area. Thank you all. Yes, I think that was everything from this webinar, and we are right on time. So I think yes, perfect. And yeah, thank you very much for joining this webinar.